Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Shannon Scott with Grave Talks, coming to you live from Bonaventure Cemetery with, of course, my sidekick, Kelsey McGee. She's out here in her favorite place, too. You know, her favorite word, cemetery. Hey, girl. She's, smelling around, seeing what other critters have been here recently. But we're over here in the Jewish section of Bonaventure Cemetery, and lovely section. I think because it's a little bit off of the regular visitor trail too, as far as like the tourist stuff in Bonaventure. It's just kind of nice to duck over here, and it's particularly quiet. But I just was kind of in the inspired mood to do a live video, and just popped into mind was really everybody's friend and downtown neighbor, William Houdini Bradley, or better known to his family and friends as Dini Bradley. And to be honest, even though he passed away in 2019, December 19th, which is my brother's birthday actually, I had not seen his gravesite. I was very familiar with his brother's gravesite, which is just really a stone's throw that direction. And that, of course, is Milton Bradley. Sorry about that. A little atmospheric noise there. Looks like a couple F-18s going over there to Buford or something. But William Houdini Bradley, I believe, younger brother to Milton Bradley. But you can see he was a locksmith, and I thought it was just great that family and friends are bringing keys to put around the grave or, near the grave. But 7 generations, I think, of locksmiths have operated around the corner there of, what is that, State Street and just off of Drayton and State downtown, where I think 5 generations, or is it 7 out of the later building? But anyway, a whole lot of locksmiths have worked on that corner through decades and decades. And I think the key here with this is Bradley. I believe, if memory serves, that is how Dini here would answer the phone if you call Bradley's. And I think that's a great expression of not only the trademark name, the brand, but also a statement about the work ethic. Let's just take a look at some of the other cool keys up here. Some of them are, vintage car keys and unknown lock keys, but which the store was full of. And, I come from really strong work ethic, parents and all kinds of family. And I think that's the first thing that, when I think of Dini Bradley, that sticks out. So, for example, when I would get locked out of my apartment, sometimes as a young student here at the art school at 2 a.m, there was no such thing as pop-a-lock or, some kind of commercial person like that. You had really one option, if I remember right, and that was Bradley locking keys. So, you would go through the yellow pages or whatever it was at 2 a.m, and, maybe you weren't entirely sober, but, you would call Bradley, and it kind of blew my mind. There was no, I don't remember any answering service. I remember Dini kind of answering the phone at that hour, like straight out of bed. And, I was just on the other side of Forsyth Park, downtown Savannah, so he didn't send over one of his henchmen, if you will, a worker. He would actually just roll out of bed with his, tousled jet black hair, and it would be kind of, sideways or whatever, and he would roll into his, seems like it was a red GMC work truck, and it had a big dent in the back left corner or something, but, it was probably from the 70s or late 60s or something. He would just ride over in that jalopy and for $75, let me back into my apartment. And that was really my first, memories of Dini Bradley. And then just, being that I was a fan of the vintage shop that's still very vintage downtown, where you see things like painted on the signs, we mend everything but a broken heart, or we fix everything but a broken heart, or something like that. But, you know, his shop was full of relics, you know, antiques with history tied to them. And, you know, I could always get good stories in there. So, you know, one day I said, Mr. Bradley, you know, what are these swivel stools here? You know, the chrome swivel stools with the kind of the orange, I don't know, not Teflon, but, you know, kind of like some 60s material, looked like plastic. And he said, well, you know, Martin Luther King sat in those in a sit-in on Broughton Street many, many years ago. And when that business shut down, I told the man that owned the building, I want those seats. So I believe they're still there in the windows of Bradley's. You know, some real Dr. King sit-in seats kind of thing. And, you know, as we became, I guess, better acquainted, I was in the back of his store one day, and I noticed all these kind of like water-stained photographs of Houdini and Bess Houdini, his wife, and you know, they looked real period photos, you know, like they weren't just sort of copies, but like vintage, you know. So I said, Mr. Bradley, do they call you Dini because you were named or nicknamed for Houdini? And he said, well, Houdini is on my birth certificate, but I didn't want everyone calling me Houdini, so I became Dini. That made a lot of sense. And I said, well, why do they call you, you know, why did they name you in that respect? And he goes, well, my father was a seance, and his father was very interested in, you know, spirituality, and I guess had at one time a proclivity for seances, and notable, but Dini, up until he was 16 years of age, received a birthday card, signed by Mrs. Harry Houdini. And I guess when he was 16, she was either, you know, too old or had passed away. But, you know, what a neat thing every year on your birthday to get a birthday card from Harry Houdini's wife. And if memory serves me correctly, you know, Houdini himself died on Halloween. And long before he passed away, he and his wife had made a pact, he and Bess, that, you know, if there was such a thing as the afterlife, that there would be a word that they would communicate to each other in a seance. So, you know, for a number of years on his the anniversary of his death, Halloween, she would hold a seance, and they sold tickets to the seance table. I think they were gold, silver, and bronze, and depending on the ticket you purchased, that determined your seating arrangement near Mrs. Bess Houdini at the seance table. And if I'm correct in thinking this, but Dini's father had some sort of proximity to Bess Houdini at the seance table, which I thought was kind of cool. And, you know, they made recordings of those seances famously that, you know, people still buy on vinyl and probably cherish, and some of those are probably very expensive. But I think it's just kind of neat that his father was, you know, there and had that kind of, let's say, friendship, relationship to Mrs. Harry Houdini. So, yeah, I mean, it was just really, you know, I love going in the store and seeing Dini Bradley and always calling him Dini. And as years went by, we got kind of conned by this supposed grandnephew of Houdini, Houdini's brother. Now, when I say we, this gentleman called up one night for his wife one day to do a ghost tour with me, and of course he said his name was Houdini Houdini, which, you know, obviously rang a bell. And I asked him if he was related, and he said, yeah, I'm the great nephew of Houdini's brother, Houdini Houdini. Well, I got excited, so I called the Savannah Morning News, and I called Mr. Bradley here, and I said, Mr. Bradley, oh, this is an exciting, you know, historical hour. We've got to get you all together. And you thought that was a dandy idea. And so we got, the gentleman and his wife came out on my tour, and, you know, honestly, there was something about him that didn't sit right, but, you know, he seemed like a nice enough fellow. But the Savannah Morning News did a nice with Jane Fishman, authoring, I think, did a nice article about the Bradley family and the Houdini connection. It was just super, you know. It was really, I don't know, I kind of felt proud of it or whatever. But anyway, little red flag in 2004, though. I just didn't, something about this guy didn't sit right. So I'm just doing some research on the internet, you know, which is the internet of 2004, a very different internet. And I'm scrolling through pages and pages and pages, and, you know, I see that this guy has kind of a basic website, and he's kind of a birthday party magician or whatever. Glorified birthday party magician. Not a very impressive website. But so suddenly all these court documents started coming up from the real Houdini family, and they were cease and desisting this guy for using the Houdini family name. And I think there was some court-ordered DNA test that proved that he wasn't related, or, you know, it was really bad. And obviously I was very embarrassed. And, but, you know, I wanted to go kind of follow up with Mr. Bradley here. And I walked into the store, and he was making keys, or, you know, grinding keys, or whatever they call that. And, you know, I walked in, I said, "Hey, Mr. Bradley," and he looked over his shoulder, and he said, "Hey, Shannon, how's it going?" I said, "Oh, it's good, but hey, do you remember that guy that came to town that claimed to be the grandnephew of Houdini's brother, Hardin Houdini?" He said, "Yeah, I remember." I said, "Well, I feel really bad, but I did some extra homework on that guy, and it turns out he was just, you know, a con man, you know, writing the Houdini family name, and I just wanted to apologize for any embarrassment." And, you know, true to the classic classiness of this guy, very salt of the earth, dry sense of humor, Mr. Bradley just looked over his shoulder and said, "I knew it the whole time. I just wanted my name in the paper." I'll never forget that. So he was a class act, and even when he was suffering with Parkinson's at the end, he was still in that shop, you know, kind of managing from those big old shop chairs with the funky cushions, and, you know, making sure everything was going right, and, you know, still would say hello. His memory wasn't great, you know, but, you know, I just thought it was fascinating that he really worked up until the very end. And yeah, so it's been great sharing some memories of the very much beloved Dini Bradley from the family plot here, and showing off the cool gravesite with all the keys. So I think that's probably fair game. If you guys come to Bonaventure, you're inspired by Mr. Bradley's story, Dini Bradley, bring him a key. And I don't know if he can do much with it, but he'll consider that a really sweet gesture. Well, gang, be sure to check in with my YouTube channel, Grave Talks with Shannon Scott on YouTube, and we'll keep storing you from America's great cemeteries. So we appreciate you tuning in for a little while, and I hope you guys have a blessed day out there, and we'll be back with more. And Kelsey sends her fond thoughts as well. You guys take care.